In the West Texas Food Bank, we definitely have the philosophy that we are not a handout, we are a hand up. So we are going to take care of your needs as far as what you need to put on your table and to remove that stress within your home. But we're also going to match you with all the different nonprofits in our community, and then also with our social workers to help you be able to work through those barriers and
Right.
get out of our system.
Hi, I'm Jessica McCoy with Raising Midland, a podcast for parents in the Permian. Today, I'm really excited for you guys to meet my friend Libby. Libby Stephens is the executive director at the West Texas Food Bank, and we're going to talk all about things that are coming up in our government and how it affects food scarcity here in Texas. Hey, how's it going?
Hi.
I'm so excited that you're here, Libby.
I am so excited to be here. Like when you started this podcast, like Autumn and I were like, we really want the food bank to be on there, which is so funny.
Thank you. I very much appreciate that. And Autumn, she's off camera right now, but Autumn was like, hey, can you interview us? And I was like, yes. But we had already filled out season 1. And I just I love that go get it, like go getter mentality.
Yeah, we were probably like stage 5 clingers, stalkers. We
No,
wanted to
and
be
you're
on this.
sweet. No, you guys are so sweet.
So we are so excited to be here. And we really do feel like a podcast like this is really helping inform. There's so many new families coming into Midland or families that have decided to stay here.
Uh-huh.
And I feel like it's just a great platform to talk about what makes Midland so special.
Thank you. I mean, honestly, I think it's important too to give people, and especially nonprofits that affect women and children in particularly and families, just an idea of how to like express maybe some of the things that you can't talk to a journalist about,
Right.
and I don't consider myself a journalist, but I feel like it's very helpful for you to be able to speak candidly about your organization. Because like we were saying off camera, oftentimes when you get called to do an interview, you can only talk about what the reporter wants to talk about. And you're like, no, there's just so much more. So
Yes.
on that note, tell me a little bit about your role. How long have you lived in Midland? How did you get involved with the West Texas Food Bank?
So I'm actually from Odessa. So we moved there when I was 8. And so I guess, I'm a native and I do have papers. I can go back and forth between Midland and Odessa. So that's always nice. Moved away, went to school, came back and started volunteering. At that point, I was married to my first husband. I was a stay-at-home mom. I had 2, almost 3 small children at that point. They were really close together. And I got involved with the Junior League of Odessa, the Education Foundation. I mean, I was pretty much like, you know, we're on the circuit, I guess you could say, for the nonprofit world. And there was a group of us that was in junior league, and they had a teacher and started talking about there was hungry kids in classrooms. At that point, oil was like $120 a barrel, and we were
The
like,
good old days.
the good old days. But we were like, that's insane. Like, we should not have hungry children in school. So there was a group of us that came together and co-founded what is now known today as Food to Kids. And it was a collaborative project between the Education Foundation of Odessa, the West Texas Food Bank, and also the Junior League.
So that's so interesting. I think some of the perceptions that people have about Midland and Odessa is that there's so much money, so everyone's rich.
Well, and I think that if you look at that on a scale, you're probably right. Like everybody out here, even people who aren't in the oil industry are still being paid a higher wage because you're constantly having to compete with the oil and just the cost of living out here. It's really expensive. And with inflation, what's happened the last 3 or 4 years has also made it more of a problem. So when you start thinking about what it costs to live, what's movable in a budget, which is, food. I mean, that's usually what's movable. Your car insurance or your car payment to get to and from work. Yeah, rent, like that stuff's not movable. So what is movable? The amount of food that you purchase. So there's a group of us. We co-founded Food to Kids, and we became its own 501c3, its own little nonprofit. We went from 150 kids to 300 kids in a year, and it piloted the program. And the more I got involved with the West Texas Food Bank, because this was a collaborative project between the 3 of us, the more I realized that our food bank and our community deserved more. At that point, the West Texas Food Bank was only distributing about 2.7 million pounds of food a year to the 19 counties that we serve. So we do cover 34,000 square miles of West Texas.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
So like all the way from Midland down to
We
like
go-
Presidio, or
So we go all the way like Dawson, Lamesa, we go that county, we go all the way down to the border. We go all the way over to Big Spring, Howard County, and then we cover all but the last 3 counties in the state of Texas to the west, and that's under El Pasoans fighting hunger.
It's amazing.
So we have all of that space. We have 90 different partner agencies that we work with in each one of those counties, and they do a bulk of our distribution. If you think about it, they do probably about between 62 and 64% of our distribution to the 19 counties.
Oh.
So, and at that point, we only fundraised about $1.9 million. We were in a very, very sad little broke down warehouse on Second Street. And I remembered volunteering at like the Oklahoma City Food Bank and some places like that where I was, went to school and thought, our community deserves better. Like we are so philanthropic out here, but this is like what we have. So, at the time, the board was going through a transition. Feeding America does oversee all 200 food banks in the country. We were actually up to lose our charter and no longer have a food bank out here. We'd be gobbled up into Lubbock as
How long ago is this?
14 years ago.
What? That's pretty recent.
So the current board at the time, which was Wade Keeler with the Abel Hanger
Mhm.
Foundation and some of those guys, took a gamble. Like I was a stay-at-home mom. I had no true nonprofit experience other than being on every board,
Yeah.
between here and Dallas, I
Hey,
felt
that's
like. It
experience.
is. It really was. And so they ended up saying, why don't we try this and see how this works? And I said, okay. So
Amazing.
at that point, people didn't work from home, and I worked from 9:30 to 3 until my kids were at Mother's Day out and
Amazing.
picked them up. And then on Fridays, I worked from home, which back 14 years ago, a lot of people didn't do
Yeah, that's
that.
pretty innovative.
So the board was really they trusted like the process, like to see if we could work out, We were dating, and I still joke around today that we're still dating because I still walk into every board meeting not knowing if I'm walking out with a job. But
It's nonprofit work.
yeah, it is. So, but within the first year, we started a very aggressive capital campaign to build the first 2 facilities that we've built, which we ended up doing $13.3 million in 13 months and 5 days. Uh,
Wait, that's insane. For people that don't have never worked in the nonprofit sector, that is a huge capital campaign to be able to get within a 13
in
months?
5 days. 5 days.
13 months and 5 days.
I ate a lot of chicken salad.
Yeah,
Yes.
about to say,
Yeah.
because you're probably like, I have to I'm not moving from my desk. I'm literally calling
No, it
people.
was just I was constantly just like out doing speaking engagements, talking about the food bank, meeting with funders, with corporations, and just really talking about how important it was that our food bank and our community deserved better and all the things that we could do. I mean, all these dreams about cooking classes and educational gardens and food to kids backpack programs and school pantries and higher education, pantries and senior box programs and cooking. I mean, just all the things,
That's amazing.
and we wanted to bring all of that to West Texas because
Mhm.
that's what you saw at larger food banks across the country. And in my mind, it was like, so what if we're not as big as Houston? We still deserve to have all the cool stuff.
Right. And also, it kind of looks bad if you can't support everyone within your community if there's this massive amount of
And
distribution of wealth.
well, and the other problem too, I think, is food banks truly are the heartbeat of your community. Like we are the volunteer. We have 8,000 hours of volunteers that come through our doors, so or 8,000 individuals that come through and volunteer at our food bank. That saves us $350,000 in payroll that we can, totally invest directly back into our community. So now, of course, 14 years later, we distribute 14 million pounds. We have a $9.8 million budget. When I started, we had about 18 people on staff. Now we have 58. And we've grown. Food to Kids started now is no longer its own 501(c)(3). It actually sunset into the West Texas Food Bank. It came home to its mom to kind of roost. I always joke around. But that now encompasses all of our children feeding programs, which is diapers and formula and baby food. Then we'll have Food to Kids backpack program that feeds about 3,800 kiddos a weekend in the 19 counties. Then we also have our school pantry program, which it has been sponsored by Pioneer, but it looks like Exxon will be
Yeah,
taking that over. So
I know.
we're super
Rip
excited.
Pioneer.
Yeah. So we're super excited about Exxon. They're going to be sponsoring any school in the Permian who wants a school pantry can have one. So
That's amazing.
I know. So we are so excited about that, and that Exxon is continuing that dedication to our work in the 19 counties. And then also we have our higher ed is something we're really proud of too, is that we have school pantries for UTBB, Odessa College, Midland College, Howard, and Sul Ross. And so we always do a big kickoff event. We call them, it's called a road show. And we show up on the campuses in September and we show the students how it works, where their pantries are, what's there. We have hamburgers and hot dogs. And then we have a huge produce. Oxy provides us with a mobile farmers market truck, and we sit out and we hand out all the free produce that those kiddos want. And it's designed for dorm rooms or dorm fridges. So,
Nice.
like bags of salad and stuff. And especially for our athletes, it's really great. And that stuff is expensive. So,
Yeah,
and then usually we do also a volunteer event for like the student athletes, because they all need hours.
100%.
So they'll, sack 8,000 food to kids sacks in like 2 hours. The
That's
UTB football
amazing.
team is like a machine. So, and we do that.
Weren't
But
they just there like last week? I know we're gonna air this like later, but I was noticing that UTPB is very involved with you
yes.
guys. That's
So
fantastic.
every Monday we have a group of the football teams comes and volunteers.
Wow.
The basketball team is huge with us. The softball and the soccer girls. They are like machines.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so and we get to know the kids,
Right.
like we know who they are. They're there every Monday night, like sometimes we feed them pizza or, sometimes some of them ask for help, and so we're able to help connect the dots, which I think is really important too, because we want our kiddos to finish college and work into our workforce
Right.
here in the Permian. So I think that's important.
That's amazing. Okay, so kind of tell me a little bit about why food banks are so important. I know a little bit about food deserts. Would you consider Midland a food desert?
Absolutely.
Okay, so
So
because I mean, for people that may not know what a food desert is, it's basically lack of access to healthy food, have it be produce, meat, basically your food pyramid.
So if you really think about West Texas, like what we do grow out here is oil and mesquite.
Hmm.
So yeah, we're in a food desert.
Yeah.
I think also what makes it even more complicated is when you really start thinking about places like Sanderson, Texas. They don't have a grocery store in Sanderson. They
Hmm.
only have a Stripes. So if they want to use any kind of SNAP benefits or food stamps or anything like that, they have to drive to Fort Stockton, which round trip is a hot minute. And
Paying for
also,
gas, probably time away from work, or like if you're an hourly employee
what if you're elderly and you can't see?
or you're a high school student and like you have to take care of your other siblings.
So that creates a challenge. So that's why we also, implemented a mobile pantry program. So we do 31 distributions a month throughout the 19 counties in those rural communities that we really are what we call trapped. And we partner with those partner agencies out there. One of our big initiatives, when I first started, we only distributed like 300,000 pounds of produce a year. Right now, produce is 32% of our total amount that we distribute.
Uh-huh.
And that's because we know produce is really expensive. And not only is our job to make sure that we're filling tummies, cross who needs it, but also are we procuring healthy food to help bring down the cost of healthcare? Again, if you can invest in us and we can invest into our neighbors in which
Hmm.
we're serving, then those savings can be passed on throughout their
Hmm.
community on so many different levels. Whether it's we have kiddos who are able to finish school and not drop out. Do we have people who are able to eat healthier? We're in partnership with Midland Memorial right now, and we're doing what we call a food pharmacy.
Oh, yeah. Stephen Bowerman and I were talking about that, about their preventative medicine initiative,
Hmm.
and talking about, he was kind of saying it's kind of still new to him, and his idea is personally about his own health. But one of the things that he said that I thought was really profound, and I don't know if he had planned saying it, but he said if you are having to go to the hospital, then that means that there is a failure in your healthcare system. And he was telling me, like, I mean, for acute, illness, right?
Right.
Like uncontrolled diabetes,
Yeah, like heart disease,
heart disease.
So we invested into a nutritionist on staff, and then she also has like a little assistant with her, and so she does probably about 19 classes a month throughout our community, the 19 counties, and she'll do senior places. She does libraries, museums, schools, like wherever she can
That's
go,
awesome.
and she does nutrition classes. But also with that, we have the food pharmacy. So we'll have low income, we'll get a
Mhm.
prescription for fruits and vegetables at the hospital, and they actually come to the food bank once a week. And we
That's
provide them
amazing.
with not only their prescription, but also Kayla's there, talking about different ways to store food, cook food. How do you purchase this food at the grocery store when you do go? How do you make it last longer? What are the benefits of it? Here are some recipes.
That's a lost art. So, like, I'm adopted, but my adoptive family is from Southern Ohio, Eastern Kentucky, and that's Appalachia people.
Right.
Okay. And they're really big on canning. And canning and preserving food is something that I'm learning is a lost art. Not a lot of people actually understand how to do that.
Some of our classes that we do offer at the Midland campus,
Mhm.
is like we do offer canning and things like that. Those are like like we have to have an evite and say there's no more people who can
'Cause
come.
people just show like, I'm
Yeah,
sure that those are super popular.
yeah, they're packed all the
But
time.
I mean, my adopted family, like, our roots are super poor. Like, my actual biological family are Louisiana, like, swamp
Mhm.
people. Those are my
Right.
people. So, like, but the act of preservation of food and then, kind of like hunting and all of that. I know that that's really big within West Texas, but it's a lost art to be able to actually really take care of the food that you're given.
But also to know
And
where it comes from and
exactly.
like how you grow it. And we want to teach kiddos and adults like where that comes from. So, if you go to our Midland campus, you'll see the oxy biodomes. And in
Those are
there
so cool. They look like little alien domes.
and in there we're
So
growing
cool.
bananas and kumquats and pineapples come from bushes and
Wow.
bananas come from trees and we have aquaponics going on in there and we have all kinds of different herbs so that kids can be exposed to that and see that this is where it comes from. Also at the Midland campus, we do have, our gardening program. Third Saturday of the month, anybody can come and we have a huge gardening class,
Okay,
or
I'm
series.
gonna have to sign up for that because every single time I've tried to like plant something,
It dies.
it dies.
Do you
And
kill it?
my mom like was in landscaping. She
Yeah.
was a landscape architect for I don't know 45 years,
And you kill
and
it.
I still can't do it. And I'm getting help from her,
Uh,
and I'm like, okay, Zane, we're zone AB or 8A,
yeah. Yeah.
8B, and like it is difficult to grow anything in Midland because if you're not using RO water, if you're using well water,
And it's about your dirt.
right? And then like the additional things that you add so that, your plants are getting food. Like it's very complicated. I had no idea.
Yes, you can grow things in West Texas,
Just a lot. It takes a lot of knowledge.
you just and once you get the hang of it, it's really not that
I'm
bad. But
sure.
if you go to the Midland campus, you'll see the biodomes, which is really great, and then we have butterfly gardens, of course, and bee condos talking about pollination. Don't kill your pollinators. We want to talk to kids about that, but also too, like we have like in on the side of our little house that we have out there, which is actually a classroom. It's like what you can do in your flower bed.
Cool.
Like sweet potatoes will grow here if you put them on the west side of your house,
I'm learning that mint, you need to contain mint because
Oh,
mint
so
will take
yeah,
over.
it, like, just goes crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wild.
So, I mean, that's really important that we do education and we talk about conservation, but we wouldn't be who we are and be able to do all these things, just like you see in a larger food bank without our community. And
Right.
so, but I also think not everybody realizes what a food bank can be or is, like I think there's a stereotype that we feed, just homeless people on the side of the street,
Yeah.
which we do. We have Hope for the Homeless. We do that. We partner with Breaking Bread and the Midland Soup Kitchen and, the Jesus House, and all those places to really help that demographic of who we serve. But also we're there for, our elderly population, truly a trapped group right now, with inflation, they're on fixed incomes, they have really been hit hard. A lot of our elderly population right now is raising grandkids, so that puts a lot of extra
Wow.
stress onto their homes and what they're able to provide for food because their kids are actually working, but they're
Mhm.
taking on because daycare is so expensive. Like,
Like my mom is my nanny.
right.
So like, I mean, I pay her, but I mean, not everyone has the luxury of being able to do that.
Exactly. So, that's been a increase that we've seen, over the last 4 or 5 years. We've seen more and more kiddos need services. So, we're thankful for our partnership with the Boys and Girls Clubs in Midland, Odessa, and also with low income housing. We have a kitchen staff. We have two cooks on staff and a nutritionist, and we prepare meals every day and deliver those meals to the Boys and Girls Clubs and low income housing. And then during the summer, we actually expand our Kids Cafe program to parks and museums, that need resources because schools may not be open, around
That's
them.
amazing.
So we do that.
I have a question for you. So I feel like what is very unique to Midland is that Midlanders are really concerned about their dollars making sense and making sense that, when they donate funds or designate funds to an organization, that it's going to make a really large impact and it's going to the right people, whatever that means. I'm not of this belief because I believe that healthy food should be a human right. That's just my opinion. But what do you say to people that are like, oh, well, you're just handing out government assistance? What is your challenge for that? I don't personally believe this, but I feel like it is, I would be remiss if I didn't answer that because not everyone is of I guess, philosophy that everyone deserves to have food if maybe they're disabled? Or what do you say to somebody who's been out of work and maybe that's out of their control? What do you say to that person who's like looking at West Texas Food Bank and says, "Well, what are you doing to help get them out of that
I
situation?"
think what's really unique about food banks, and not a lot of people know this, and something that we are moving to is what we call a Generation 5 food bank. But we already have 3 social workers on staff, so and they travel the 19 counties and they meet with the neighbors that need our assistance and help sign them up, whether it's for SNAP or WIC. Do they just need an ID, to go get
Mhm.
a job? Like really digging in down to
Problem solving. Because
yes.
I don't think people realize what social workers do. Social workers are really there to bridge the gap to
They're
help people
they're
get
help
out.
they're help social workers are really there to help break down the barriers of
Mhm.
why our individuals are trapped in the situations they are.
Mhm.
And the West Texas Food Bank, we definitely have the philosophy that we are not a handout, we are a hand up. So we are going to take care of your needs as far as what you need to put on your table and to remove that stress within your home. But we're also going to match you with all the different nonprofits in our community and then also with our social workers to help you be able to work through those barriers and
Right.
get out of our system. There are 4 generations of food banks in the country. We are considered a generation 4. We're one of the few in the country that has that label. Which it means that we have a huge amount of volunteerism. We have great community support, whether it's, fundraising wise or
Mhm.
just in our events. We do things that invite our community into our home, which is, we do 2 children's farmers markets a year that kids can come get as much fresh produce as they want and they get to go shop through a farmer's market. And we also have games and education and all that kind of stuff going on. We're about to do Earth Day, which is super exciting in April. We do that in partnership with Keep Midland Beautiful. We hand out free trees and tomato plants, and the rabbit people are there, and the butterfly people are there, the tree people, everyone's there, talking about our earth, which I think is super important. But we have nutrition, we've got all these other things and all these programs we do, which is senior box. We have 31 of those distributions a month, and we have over 2,200 seniors that we're delivering special food to with fresh produce. So all these different things we do. But one thing that there is a group of us or CEOs who have been friends, we started talking about like, this is great that we can keep saying that we're doing more and we're doing great every year, but that's not our job.
Mhm.
Our job is to start shortening the line, to truly start getting people out of the lines. Now, we've had some things that have made it harder for us, over the last 3 or 4 years to do that. Before COVID, Feeding America does what they call Map the Meal Gap. And it looks at food insecurity within your region, and we're compared all across. We do this thing, it's called the NAR, and you have to put all this information in, blah, 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 blah. Well, what was so exciting is that in February of 2020, we got Map the Meal Gap, and food insecurity in children in West Texas
Mhm.
had gone down.
Really?
So it means we were actually doing our job.
That's awesome.
We
But
were moving the
that's hard to
needle.
call it's hard or honestly, that's hard to excuse me, quantify? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, I mean, that's the reason why you have NAR, right? Is to be able to understand what are we
Why?
doing? Where is the needle going? How far are we making
Like what's
progress?
working, what's
How
not.
how often do food pantries not improve?
Food banks or food
Yeah.
pantries? Those are
Well,
2 different things.
sorry. Food banks, how like is it normal to not be making progress? Because I cannot
Well,
to me, I'm imagining there's so many external factors. You cannot control the price of eggs. You cannot control unemployment. You cannot control if Medicaid and Medicare are cut. Okay. So yeah, I know. I'm gonna get canceled. So I'm imagining it feels like you have a sieve and you're throwing sand and the sand is just not making it. You know what I mean? Like you're like trying your best, but then it's just like it might feel like you're not making a lot of progress. So how often is it that food banks are not making progress within their
I
communities?
think what is sad is that before 2020,
Uh-huh.
the big
The big thing.
yeah,
We have to be
the
careful because YouTube will, like, take us down for
yes,
misinformation.
the big crash of
Yeah.
2020, food banks were starting to see
Progress.
progress, and we were also changing the way we were doing business,
And when
the
we
way
say progress, we're meaning that people are
eating
m
healthier food. We're
and
distributing more produce that we're starting to actually get people out of our lines. And
okay,
maybe we're not going down, but we're staying the same,
okay.
which means that yes, there's still people who will constantly need our services,
Mhm.
but keep going up means we're not getting the old people out. Like we're
Mhm.
still just adding to.
Right.
So you want to maintain or go down is really what you want to see happening when you
Mhm.
look at pounds distributed, and what you're doing in your community. So I think that was really hard to sit there and realize that we were doing the right things for food insecurity in children,
That's
and that
amazing.
needle was going down. And so we were all excited. And then like 3 weeks later, the world stopped
Yeah.
spinning, in a weird way. And it really set us in a totally different projection. So we're excited that we're going to be doing this Generation 5 food bank. There's only a few of us in the country that are really going to try to figure out wraparound services and pull our other nonprofits together and the hospital, like really be a collaborative effort. And we are kind of a unique situation because food banks are usually one of the first places you see people that need help.
Yeah.
Like if you don't have food, that's usually, I mean, you're
Right.
right. So
Up a
it
creek
gives
without a paddle.
yeah, so it gives us a unique opportunity to really start with families and figure out why you're here and what barriers do you have and how do we handhold you through the process. So, food banks, when you get into like, it's not our place to judge.
No.
We are going to feed you.
Everyone needs food.
Like we are going to feed you no matter what,
Right.
right? But yes, we do get federal funding.
Mhm.
Right now that's a little
Yeah, let's talk about that.
unforeseen of what
Right.
that looks like. We're lucky that it's only 16% of our budget. But USDA and Texas Department of Agriculture and HHSC are really important to what we do. We're talking about these social workers.
Mhm.
Part of those salaries are paid for by HHSC. What
Okay.
kind of difference is that truly making in our communities? Huge. That's what's helping us be able to shorten
Yeah.
our lines. And so we want to continue that program and investing into that staff. And so that takes stress off us fundraising for salaries. And all we have to worry about is fundraising for food, you
Okay,
know?
so let's talk about this. I feel like this is going to be a touchy subject, and I don't care what people think about my questions, but I'm already like waiting
I'm
for.
happy to
I'm
talk.
waiting. No, I'm not for you. You'll be fine. But I'm just ready for like the texts that I'll get that are like, okay.
Farm bill.
My question is, okay, yeah. So let's talk about it.
Snap.
Farmers went into this election saying we're going to get benefits, right? Because generally speaking, under Republican administrations, usually that means ideally, fiscal responsibility, right?
Usually the farm bill is the most bipartisan bill that's passed,
Great,
and is
because
also the second largest bill that's ever passed by our United States Congress next to defense.
okay,
And I
well, that's
don't
helpful. I didn't know that.
I don't think people realize how the farm bill it touches every single individual in our country.
Yeah,
Whether you were involved in reduced and free lunch, whether you were involved in food banks and its emergency food assistance program, it's called TFAP.
yeah.
What's really amazing about the TFAP program is that so let's say
Hmm.
that there is a bunch of extra carrots on the
Hmm.
commodity market, right?
Hmm.
So USDA basically becomes the carrot cartel and they come in and they buy up all those carrots, which helps support our
Hmm.
farmers and growers.
Hmm.
And then where does that go? That extra commodity comes to your food banks who hold a
Hmm.
TFAP contract
Yep.
with USDA for us and also Texas Department of Ag, depending on what state you're in. So TFAP is extremely important. We
Right.
do receive a small amount of change, literally it's change for the storage, distribution, and transportation of those
Hmm.
commodities. But that's really important.
It's so interesting to hear you talk about food as a commodity.
It is.
Cause like, I mean, duh, but like, it's just interesting. Cause in my head, I'm thinking, okay, well, cotton and,
No food. Pork, lentils, tariffs are that
yes.
that trade mitigation, all that stuff will come back. That affects food banks. What was really great about food banks and what President Trump did last time
Uh-huh.
was when we were in all these tariff, trade, whatever wars, he actually gave USDA funding to help support our farmers because China wasn't taking our pork.
Right.
They weren't taking our lentils.
And then they have rice. Like there was rice. I remember reading that about what Trump was suggesting back when was it 2017, I think,
Mhm.
about the rice and like we were going to start building our own rice. Which I mean, being from my biological family, being from Louisiana, in my opinion, Louisiana rice is like the
The
best,
best. Right.
right? I think South Carolina would disagree because South Carolinians
But
love their rice as well. But I agree with that. But what I'm wanting to make sure we're talking about too is I've been doing a lot of research for this episode in particular, and I know a lot of farmers are they were under the impression that there might be some cost savings for them because there were, I guess, some grants that they could have applied for that would help them improve their farmer, like basically their infrastructure. So, like fencing, better silos, better equipment to be able to, harvest. And then now, they already spent the money based off of like knowing, okay, hey, President Trump was going to get elected. So a lot of them have made these financial decisions on behalf of their farm where they spent maybe $1.2 million on new fencing so that they could keep their cattle in, to be able to reduce, expenditures on lost cattle or injured cattle, right?
Mhm.
And then now they are not being promised that money. And a lot of the federal funding is now being decreased, which, I agree, audits are great. But now it's becoming a huge issue. And what a lot of people don't realize is that the suicide rate, if you want to just cut it, very clear, suicide rate of farmers is 3 times higher than any industry, according to I think it was Reuters that I read.
It's that and Border Patrol.
That and border control. Okay, so that
Mhm.
makes sense. So I mean, objectively, I'm looking at that and I'm like, okay, hold on. If we have farmers that have made financial decisions on behalf of their farm, a lot of farmers also do not do insurance because a lot of them will save money enough to be able to, instead of using insurance to replace their John Deere tractor or whatever, they will just do cash.
Right.
So a lot of them are on a cash flow basis, which if anyone has done business knows how difficult that is. I was on cash flow for a very long time. I mean, I still am for my business. It's incredibly difficult. But then to make financial decisions, based off of, I'm not saying that's right. They should have waited, but whatever. That's what's happening for a lot of
Well,
farmers. So what does that look like? What happens if our farmers just decide, I'm not doing this
well, that's a
anymore?
national security issue.
I mean, like we're looking at potentially
Yeah.
like what happened in the Dust Bowl,
Yeah, like
right? Where
like
people were dying of
we've gotta have
food scarcity.
we have to support our agriculture community, and that's one thing I think too that you can look and see that food banks are vital to that. So when there are things like trade wars and tariffs, the government made sure that those commodities were still being purchased.
I didn't
And
realize, I did not even think of it that way, where food could be a national security issue.
yes, if we have to bring in food from other countries, like we're just
That's crazy.
yeah. So I mean that it's all connected. The Farm Bill is very interesting. It has everything to do from forestry and fires to your labels on your food
Hmm.
cans to food banks, TFAP, senior box, kids cafe programs, reduced and free lunch for kiddos. I mean, any of that kind of stuff, it all falls through the food bank. But I mean, for the Farm Bill, but also when you talk about agriculture, like was cotton. Like what is cotton ranked as? As you talk about different kinds of insurance and
Hmm.
pesticides that are used
Hmm.
and all those things.
And then the pesticide issues that are happening in the, like, I think it's the Missouri, I think, where there was like a leak. And now one farmer, I think, has to like basically burn I think it's like 3 years worth
Of growth, yeah.
of growth. I mean, that is like financially devastating.
Yes, absolutely, and so, you look at crop insurance, something like
Hmm.
that. This is all inside the Farm Bill. So, um, you know,
I'm just wondering from your perspective, how,
I
because that I'm just thinking from a high level, how is that going to change? How is that going to affect? We're all talking about hypotheticals here. Well, kind of, sort of. Next, now it's reality. But how is that going to change? Like, how is that going to really affect your procurement?
it's hard. I mean, because
Supply chain is something you always have to think
yes,
about
we
as
are
an executive
constantly thinking
director.
about supply chain, and definitely climate has made a difference in our supply
Hmm.
chain in the last 3 or 4 years. We get carrots, and all of a sudden the carrots are huge because there's been too much water, or there's a drought, and that changes things too. So it is concerning on procurement. Like one of the things that we've been able to keep up with the need in food banks is because produce really is so much less expensive than shelf stable food. So that's
Hmm.
part of the reason why you see our food banks so focused on produce because we can reach the need of more people with
Hmm.
fresh produce, but also we're being a good steward and we're improving the health of the neighbors in which we're serving, along with hand holding that with education. I have a lot of faith in Madam Secretary Rowlands. She is
Hmm.
from Texas.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, she went to A&M. She was the
Oh,
first
come on.
female.
That's like,
Yeah.
if anyone knows anything about ag, it would be Texas
Yeah,
A&M.
yeah, and she was like the first female student president at Texas
Oh,
A&M,
cool.
and she worked at
My husband's gonna love this.
this
He's the biggest ag you've ever met.
and So's Autumn's husband.
Oh,
T
cool. Yeah.
Texas, Public Policy Foundation, she was there in Austin for a long time. She's really close to Commissioner Miller, so Texas
Hmm.
Department of Agriculture, and, she's a mom, which I always think is important,
Hmm.
especially when you're talking about food. But she grew up in a small, rural farming, ranching community. And so
Hmm.
I think like the things that you're talking about, I mean, if you look at what she announced that she was already going to do about eggs, about
Hmm.
how much they're investing in that for
So is the
USDA.
government subsidizing eggs?
Well, basically what they're doing is they're going to help our producers
Okay.
clean up the bird flu.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's another thing too, because that could technically be a national security issue too. I'm just thinking like, I don't know, my adopted family, I have some one side of my family is from Lithuania.
Hmm.
So something that was happening in the 40s was like their food was affected because in Lithuania they didn't want to purchase things from Germany and then they didn't want to purchase things from Russia, and being in Lithuania you're kind of landlocked.
Yeah, like you're in the middle.
Yeah, so I can imagine that that's something we also have to be concerned about is with the bird flu.
Right.
Like let's just say,
Well, any of it. And, and part of what the Farm Bill covers is there's actually dollars in there to deal with research and what to do.
yeah.
Like if we have an infestation of boll weevils,
Yeah, about to
or
say.
buffalo, like all of those kinds of things. That's all inside the Farm Bill. So the Farm
Wow.
Bill is like super important. A lot of people get caught up when they think about the Farm Bill, they think about SNAP, which is
Mhm.
the supplemental nutrition
Food
program.
stamps.
Yeah, food stamps. A lot of people just focus on SNAP, which SNAP, yes, is a part of the food bill. They've asked for $230 billion worth of cuts
That's so much
out of
money.
ag over the next 10 years, you know? And I'm sure that we are going to do an audit and they will find some fraud and waste in there, just
Mhm.
like everything else.
It's a good thing to get audited,
That's what I'm saying. It's like, I think it'll be positive, work requirements, state of Texas. We already have work requirements for SNAP benefits.
but
You
not
d-
every
was-
state
Not
does.
every state does. So I think, that'll probably be something that you'll see. But when you think about work requirements to qualify for SNAP benefits, it's not just going to work every day. So it can be volunteering at your school. It
Mhm.
can be, doing stuff at church. It can be volunteering at a food bank, like a nonprofit, so that it can be all different kinds of things as a work requirement. So I do feel like they're pretty flexible on
That's what I
that.
like about Texas is that, we're at least trying to find solutions.
Right.
I think it's difficult sometimes to expect people. I mean, like food, yes, is a human right, but like you also have to do something to help get yourself exposed to other opportunities,
Right.
and I think that's important that our state offers that and
And
like
they
what
do.
makes it a
And that's why we
requirement.
have, HAC support social workers and food banks. Like
Right.
we're trying to find solutions. So I really do think that we'll see more of that coming out of USDA and our
Hmm.
federal government, which will improve the effective and efficiency of what we do as far as us distributing food and procurement. But I'm also hoping that will bleed through into our agriculture community. I mean, I'm sure we're going to see some pain,
Yeah.
but I hope in the end, just like I look at what we have in the state of Texas as far as Texas Department of Agriculture and what Commissioner Miller invest in, that we do good things in the state of Texas.
Right.
Like we are one of the only states that has a really amazing it's Texans Feeding Texas grant that
Hmm.
we get from the state. And it's actually where we use those funds to buy fresh produce from Texas growers to
Hmm.
feed Texas,
I know
in need.
HEB's really
HEB,
supportive.
oh my God,
It's my favorite.
they're like
Market Street can go buzz off. I'm
well,
sorry. I love
I love
HEB.
Market Street too.
Sorry.
But HEB is like the United Nations of Texas.
I love them so much. I
We would
just
not, any food bank in the state of Texas, we would not be who we are today without HEB support.
okay, just because I'm curious, how does that work? So, like, if I'm HEB and I haven't, I'm just assuming this is how it works. If I'm HEB and I haven't sold XYZ amount of pounds of food and it's about to expire, or like, is there a portion that they get from their supplier and they're like, okay, this is going for sale, and then all this is going to the food banks, or do they go, we're going to take this almost expired stuff and give it
So,
to the bank? I know that that might be like really rude of me to say, but like,
nope.
how are they able? Just as a business person, I'm thinking that makes sense. Let's close the gap if we're going to be putting stuff over here
So what happens is
to reduce
food
loss.
banks, we procure food 4 different ways.
Okay.
So one of them is the United States government. We work with TFAP,
Uh-huh.
senior box programs, those kinds of things. We have what we call a food purchase program. So yes, food banks do sell food, but we only do it in this one program. One thing when you have donated products, you can't always count on what you have on your shelves.
Mm.
So when like I first started at the food bank, we had like Nutri-Grain bars, like marshmallows, and like tomato sauce.
Not food nutrition, no, nutrient dense foods.
Right.
They weren't that.
Right. No. And on top of that, like, can you feed a community on that? No. So what we can do is
Oh, well, you might want to talk to my toddler
like they may
because,
be all
like,
in.
if
That would be cool.
my daughter would
Love those Nutri-Grain
say,
bars.
Nutrigrain, I can live on Nutrigrain for the rest of my life, Mom. I don't need spinach.
Right. Yeah. Like I'm good. So what we figured out is that we could go purchase a 30,000 pound truck of green peas and we
Okay.
break out the cost of our cost per case and our partner agencies can purchase that at our cost. So we have created a
Nice.
co-op and we have staples all the time in our warehouse for from our partner agencies.
Mhm.
So, and then on top of that, of course, we have TFAP, the food assistance program. And then we do a very aggressive salvage and reclamation
Okay.
program. So that means our food banks, all food banks go to grocery stores, Walmarts, HEBs, Uniteds in our service area and pick up food every week that would be about to spoil, fresh produce. It's New Year's, they ordered too many black eyed peas, they
Yeah.
didn't sell them all. They donate that to the West Texas Food Bank or
Great.
your food bank. And then we take it, put it back on our sort and process it, clean it, make sure it's fine. And then we put it on our shopping list for our partners and
Mhm.
they can purchase that, even
That's
though it's
amazing.
free. So donated and salvaged product is free. TFAP is free. Produce is free from us. The only thing that you pay for from the West Texas Food Bank is our cost to purchase those staple items.
It's amazing.
And then we do a 15 cent per pound delivery fee to our partner agencies.
So when I just want to make sure I'm understanding the terminology. When you say partners, are you talking about the recipients of the food? Or are you talking about
Food
like
pantries.
food
So if you
pantries?
think
Okay.
about Salvation Army, Catholic Charities, Jesus House, the Jubilee
Mhm.
Center, Methodist Church here in town, First
Mhm.
Pres, like they all have pantries. Most of those pantries get, the Baptist Crisis Center, they get probably about 85% of their food actually comes from the West Texas Food
Really?
Bank. Yeah.
Wow.
And they
How
do some of their own small food drives and they do things like
right.
that. But, most pantries across the 19 counties that are partners with us, they get about 85% of their food
This is
from
so
us.
much more complicated than what I thought. I love it.
Yeah, we're
There's so many
like
layers.
yeah, that's what I think people don't realize about food banks. Like we have like we do a lot of public policy work.
Uh-huh.
We're the voice for those,
Mhm.
for who need support, but we also do policy work protecting our farmers and growers and producers, talking
Wow.
about the economic impact of what we do. And we help support, when there's too much commodity on the market or we're in the middle of a trade tariff war, like that we're going to support our agriculture community. USDA will. They're going to take those commodities that aren't being exported and they're going to keep them within our states, here in the United States. So that'll be great for food banks if that
Mhm.
does happen kind of in a way.
Because honestly, if it stays within the United States, we're actually reducing our national security liability, I guess.
Mm,
Like you're putting less chance of potential food scarcity across the United States.
right.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, right? So last time under Trump, I actually co-chaired the National Trade Mitigation
But you
Committee.
told me you testified in front of Congress.
Yes.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, did you? I bet that was so scary.
No, actually, I
I could
again,
talk to a wall, but like if I had to go in front of like Congress, that
so
would
it
make me
was
so
the
nervous.
ag committee was in San Angelo, and Chairman Conaway at that point had asked that I come talk. And you only have 2 minutes, and so you have to put your name in the thing, and they draw your name, and you sit there like all day, right? So, and I'm supposed to talk about SNAP. Like that's why I'm there. That's why I was asked to come, supposed to talk about SNAP. And one of my really good friends, her name is Carrie Calvert, and she's vice president of government affairs for Feeding America, and she lives in
Wow.
D.C. And Carrie and I are really good friends still this day. And we had been batting around this idea of what we call farmers to food banks. And we hadn't quite like flushed it out. So I'm like
Did
just
you just
sitting.
drop it
Oh yeah,
live?
it was
Oh, I
awful.
love that.
So I'm
That
literally
is
sitting
so
there.
great.
So I'm literally sitting there, and like there's like a bunch of Feeding Texas board members, a bunch of other food bank CEOs. And I'm like, but what I'm sitting there and I'm listening to is farmers talking about how they're like they're broke. Like they have no
Right.
money. Like they're like it
It's
is a
cash
struggle.
flow.
Yeah, it's cash.
So they
Yeah.
have no money whenever they're done sometimes after, settling their
But even
banks,
on part of that, they're
bank
talking
accounts.
about that they grow stuff that they can't send to market because it's two-headed carrots. It's the wrong color squash. It's not
Yes.
pretty fruits and vegetables.
Mhm.
And Carrie and I had this idea, and we'd been talking about it, that we wanted to make a program through USDA that would actually purchase what we call grade 2, grade 3 fruits and vegetables
Uh-huh.
on pennies on the dollars to our growers, so at least they would get something for
Yeah.
it, and then the food banks, we could take it. We don't care if it's like a too big carrot or two-headed or the wrong color squash, and
Not
our
aesthetic.
yeah, like, it's not pretty.
Yeah.
Like, we don't care. Like, whatever.
Food is food.
Food is food. So, like, of course, they call my name, and I'm like, "Okay," and I walk up there, and, like, I
I
look
love
back
it
at
so
Celia,
much.
who's, like, the CEO of Feeding Texas, and I just kinda smile, and I'm like, "This is like, I'm just doing it." So I'm like, "Chairman," and members of the committee, because there's ag committee, like, we're doing the middle of Farm Bill, and I'm like, "I think that we need to support our growers," and just started talking about this Farmers to Food Bank idea, which was crazy because it would be a new program. That year was a zero-based budget for the Farm Bill, and Farmers to Food Banks came in that Farm Bill. That was the first time it was pitched, and we were able to get it into the
You're
farm.
so cool.
No, I'm not. And we were able to get it in there, and it started at only like $20 million, but during COVID, it completely exploded to help support growers because the restaurant industry was closed. And Farmers to Food Banks continues today, and it's actually in this next farm bill we're hoping to increase that to support our agriculture community.
That's
So
amazing.
food banks create an economic impact on so many different levels. So if you think about it in agriculture and produce and farming communities, food banks are really important. If you think about what we're able to do in our local
Mhm.
community, so Dr. Perryman, I don't know if
Yeah,
you
yeah.
okay, he did an economic impact study just on the West Texas Food Bank, just in Ector County.
Really?
And it
What did he
can
find?
he found that we made a $19 million economic impact because what we do is we create a multiplier effect.
Yeah.
So we give someone food, they can now put gas in their car. They can now go to work, which you
Not call out sick.
right. So this creates this, which then means they can pay for daycare, which then means that that daycare worker can get paid, which then means they can go to the grocery store. So it's this economic multiplier effect, and
Wow.
that's what food banks I think is so magical about us is that we do so many amazing things, right? Like we have all these great programs. We do education. We talk about nutrition. We talk about the environment. We're feeding people, which is like super cool, right? Like just in
Right.
itself. But then you get into like the true like inner workings of what we do.
There's a huge ripple
It's a
effect.
huge ripple effect. That's why I say food banks really are the heartbeat of your
Mhm.
community. And so when we all first started at the food bank, we wanted the West Texas Food Bank to be that, to be something our community was proud of
Mhm.
and to be something that truly made a difference and on so many different levels. And
Mhm.
I feel like the West Texas Food Bank, with the support of our community, organizations, corporations, our staff, our board, we've been able to truly dream really big and
Wow.
bring that here to West Texas. And that's why I say, like, we are known across the country, to
They're
be
probably so confused. They're like, why? There's so much heat behind this organization, but it makes sense and it's so reflective of what West Texas is. So, like, just objectively, not being from here, you first come to Midland and you're like, what is out here? And then when you I think
the
it's like the
people.
fifth year where you start to realize, like, okay,
I
wait, these people are really incredible.
It's the
And
people that make West Texas, West Texas.
I
And
agree.
like we have the most beautiful sunsets. And then I
Hmm.
say that we have the most amazing people. And we have so much grit and grace
Yes.
to make West Texas special. And I think you look at the West Texas Food Bank, obviously, we have been a fighter. We've been good, bad, ugly, and one of the best. We've done it all. And we're celebrating our 40th, birthday this year. So we're excited about
Happy
that.
birthday.
Thank you. We're excited about our birthday. But I think the food bank is a true story of a nonprofit that went through everything, like really bad things. Like we were
Hmm.
not good, like we were terrible. But to look where we are today and what
Hmm.
we've been able to accomplish and to continue to think outside the box of innovative solutions to battle hunger. Like we know in rural communities, produce is tough to find and it's expensive. We know that our partner agencies don't have the means to build large cooler freezers. They're expensive to operate. So what did we do? We figured out how to build a mobile freezer cooler on wheels called a produce pod that we fill with 8,000 pounds of produce. We
Wow.
drop it off in their parking lot during their distributions to give automatic extra capacity. So they're able to hand out more fresh produce. It's free food to them
Hmm.
and to their neighbors, and it's healthier. And then we go back, pick up the pod, bring it back, clean it out. We have three of them. They probably do 300 or 400,000 pounds literally a month that we're seeing in
That's
rural
so much
communities increase
food.
because we are increasing this, the capacity.
Accessibility.
Yeah. And we we came up with that. We realized that especially our rural communities and in our schools and even here in Midland, like kiddos love getting fresh produce, right? So we went to Oxy and they built us a farmer's market mobile truck, and we take our little truck out and it pops up and it's just like a mobile farmer's market, and our kiddos get to go through and get all
That's
the fresh
awesome.
produce they want. We have a nutritionist there. We've got appetizers,
Yeah.
like, beet muffins,
So that they could taste like
and then
what's
we've
made of whatever.
and
Like,
it
I mean, no offense, but beets taste like dirt to me. But
the
like
cupcakes are good.
I've had like muffins with beet juice in it because beets have incredible amount of iron.
Yes.
The way I explain foods to my kids is based off of what each vegetable or fruit can do for their bodies.
Yeah.
So like my kids, like just the other day, I was eating carrots and ranch, which is like ultimate snack. But my daughter knows that anything orange is good for your eyes.
Mhm.
Anything green is
And
good for
that's
your
and
blood.
and you
Like,
would be surprised at how many
mhm,
kiddos don't know that
I
stuff, and
know.
that's what we're out there doing, and then plus we provide a West Texas Food Bank kiddo cookbook so that they can go home and
That's
make
cool.
healthy snacks for themselves, but also if they're taking care of, like, a guardian who's
Yeah.
elderly, that they can help make healthy snacks for them too. So, I mean, that's just an example of, like, us trying to be innovative and creative,
Mhm.
of the things we do. But also, I think we do all of this stuff. We do public policy work, but then we also do disasters,
Mhm. Do you work
and
with FEMA?
we do.
Like, is that a thing?
Texas Division of Emergency Management. Chief Kidd is one of my really good friends.
Cool.
For Hurricane Harvey, I think is a great
Mhm.
example. West Texans, again, we will ride into a storm
Yeah.
to save a day, right? For our
Yeah.
neighbors. So we helped coordinate over 600,000 pounds of resources. We were the first ones into Port Aransas that Monday morning after Harvey hit
Mhm.
to help support that food bank. And we
Wow.
followed the storm up the coast. First time in Texas's history that we had 6 sister food banks all down at the same time. And one
Wow.
of them was the largest in the country, which is Houston. We ended up partnering with the East Texas Food Bank in Tyler because Beaumont is part of, like, they have their own food bank, but they're part of Houston,
Mhm.
and they couldn't get
Makes sense. It's
north.
like not that
Yeah,
far.
they couldn't get north because of the
Mm.
flooding.
Yeah.
So we ended up pushing a ton of resources to Tyler,
Mhm.
and then the Tyler Food Bank actually ended up pushing everything down south so they could get to that northern part of the territory, like so Liberty,
Yeah.
Jasper, those areas. So they were able to get resources. One thing that we figured out, if we had had a mobile disaster truck, we could have just kept hopping from community to community and
Mhm.
just had it being backfilled from
Mhm.
the food bank. So we designed a disaster relief
That's so
vehicle,
great.
and HEB was like a $120,000 investment for this vehicle. It has satellite, it has a pop-up canopy, it has refrigerators that run
That's
into
so
it,
cool.
ham radios on it, like we can get weather reports, and it's a trailer and we drag it. HEB, being amazing, went and bought 6 more of those for all 6 of our sister food banks,
That's
and then
crazy.
now Florida has them too off of
What?
our design. So like,
Wow.
we also do disaster relief, so when you think about hurricanes or you think about fires, like, we
Right.
definitely
California.
well, Amarillo,
Oh, that's right. 1 year anniversary was like I think it was like 3 days ago.
we partnered with Pioneer to help bring in over, like, $25,000 worth of resources, and it wasn't just food, some of it was farming supplies to Zach, who runs that food bank, and we partnered with him to help bring in resources there, but we did it in a controlled fashion so that the resources went to the right place at the right time when they needed them.
And I bet you're creating SOPs around that too. So like,
Mhm.
if it happens again, well, when it happens again.
And I always joke around and say, like, when we designed and built the first 2 campuses for the West Texas Food Bank, we have since done another $12 million expansion to the
Mhm.
Odessa campus. Um, I missed the part of the handbook that talks about a pandemic. I did apparently I just skipped over that. Like, I read through hurricanes, tornadoes, freezes, floods, fires, got it. Just totally didn't even think through what that looks like.
What
And
I'm trying to think what did they base that section off of?
I
Would it
don't
be the
I mean,
Spanish
we have one
flu of
now.
the 1900s?
Yeah,
I don't
like
know. Like,
yeah.
I mean,
Uh,
we kind of had H1N1 sorta in the 90s
yeah,
or
but
early
yeah.
2000s, but
But
it didn't really hit us.
we went from 6 million pounds a year, in a year, we went to 12 million pounds. And our facility was originally designed to do 10 million pounds. Like
Oh my
we had planned for
gosh.
3-4% growth a year, like adding programs,
Right.
and those kinds of things. Did not plan for, drive-through lines, and
I remember that. I remember seeing it on TV.
we still do drive-throughs to this day.
So, okay, that leads me to my last question. Well, I have two. The last one is I ask everybody, how do you humanize your patrons? Like, how do you humanize the process of giving people food? so that people don't feel, I feel like it takes a lot of humility to ask for help in the first place.
We want to serve with dignity.
Yeah. So like how do you cultivate a culture of serving with dignity?
I think that, we rely a lot on our partner agencies to have
Mhm.
friendly, inviting pantries, right?
Mhm.
And they create relationships with the neighbors in which we're charged to serve. But I think when you come to the West Texas Food Bank location, we want it to be a happy place,
Mhm.
and we want it to be inviting. And so when you roll up to the
Mhm.
West Texas Food Bank, whether you're at the Odessa campus or the
Mhm.
Midland campus, it's green, it's happy, there's
Mhm.
gardens. We invite you in, into our
Mhm.
home. We have playgrounds for kiddos to
Mhm.
play on. Like if you go to the Odessa campus, we have this huge indoor playground and our social workers' offices are glass.
So you could watch.
So your kids go in there and play, and then
Mhm.
we can have some honest conversations of why you are in the situation you're in. And that's our job. And then we can start being more of that hand up, not just that hand out. We have an outdoor playground. We have a dog park,
That's cool.
because a lot of our seniors bring their puppies with them,
Mhm.
and they have a location to go and get their senior box and hang out with each other, and they have their pets and
Community.
a community. I mean, that's what we are there, and we have volunteer activities, and everyone's invited into a really happy space. And I look back to where we were 14 years ago, and our space was so sad and it was depressing, and I don't feel like we had the ability to serve with dignity in there. It was sad. But you
Mhm.
walk into now and you realize there's a kitchen going, and there's volunteers running around, and there's a puppy in the dog yard, and there's senior box lines going on, and um I just and there's events and there's things, and it's like we're proud of our West Texas
Yeah.
Food Bank. We're proud of the community that we're charged to serve. I consider it a huge responsibility that I walk into my role every day,
Mhm.
and I need to take care of my employees, obviously, and their families, but I'm also charged with 120,000 other individuals that we are there to feed,
That's amazing.
and that's important. So serving with dignity, and I think of us just having a different mindset from it being boxes in and boxes out. Those are people's lives,
Yeah.
and we need to make sure that we make them feel comfortable and warm and friendly. And so that's why I was like, when people always talk to me like, what was one of the pivotal moments of the food bank? And I was like,
Every day of my life.
yeah, every day of my life. But buildings,
Mhm.
those buildings that the community trusted us to build have been a complete game changer to us being able to meet the needs in our community in so many different ways. Like
Right.
everything from shooting, like the shooting that happened 5 years ago.
Mhm.
We helped get HEB here and get them set up and started feeding law enforcement. That morning, there was 800 meals that we were having to prepare for ATF and Texas Rangers, and all of that
Wow.
set up at the SAC at
And that's
UTB.
reflective of our community too, because like if you're having, I remember the like FBI was in
Oh,
town and like,
everybody
well,
was
we
here.
technically every city has an FBI, but like, so
Everybody was here. It was,
yeah.
like, crazy.
So you
Like,
have to, that's a good reflection on our community that we are able to organize and deploy very quickly.
oh, Danny called me that night. He's HEB, and, he's government corporate affairs for them, and he's based out of San Antonio. But, he called me at 10 o'clock that night, and he's like, "We're loading the trucks." And I was like, "What are you talking
That's
about?"
so cool.
And I was like, "We're fine. Our community's gonna rally. Like, we're gonna
HEB is
come
just the
together."
best.
And
Market Street could never.
and
Sorry. I
no,
just,
so and Danny's like, "No."
Costco.
No.
See what you can do,
But
because
Danny was
just
like,
saying, they're coming into town, just try to raise, HEB. I mean, they're
HEB
not
has
gonna
the
be able to
bar,
do it.
but Danny's like, "We are loading the trucks," and I hope I don't get trouble for this. He's like, "But we're coming in like bats out of hell. You gotta
That's
find me a
cool.
place to park." Like, we're about to pull out of the gates, and so he brought in 3 18-wheelers of food and
That's so
and
much.
2 mobile kitchens.
That's
And so
crazy.
I called him back. I got a hold of Dr. Woodley at UTB, and I was like, "Hey, HEB's coming in hot, and I gotta have a
Wow.
place for him to park." She's like, "Park it at the SAC." And I was
That's
like,
so
"All right."
cool.
So I'm like texting Danny, and they rolled up probably about 5 a.m. and
That's
set up, and
amazing.
by 8 a.m. we were feeding,
I love HEB. So on
and
that,
we were delivering meals to the separate crime scenes.
that's crazy. My last question for you is what gives you hope for Midland? You've talked about the buildings, but, what gives you hope for the future of Midland with y'all's impact here at the West Texas Food Bank?
My hope is that we will continue to start driving the needle down, and we will be able to get people out of our lines.
Mhm.
Um, I hope that we can help improve education for kiddos to stay in school because we're able to keep them fed. I
Mhm.
think that's important. I think Midland, Odessa, all of the Trans-Pecos, the 19 counties we serve, it truly is a magical place.
Hmm.
Like I've gotten to go all across the country and speak at different food banks and help organize capital campaigns, do policy work, but there is truly nothing like West Texas.
Truly.
And the grit and grace that we have out here
Hmm.
continues to allow us to be innovative and creative and
Hmm.
come up with solutions.
Yeah.
And so that's what I look forward and have the most hope about Midland is that we will find more solutions to slowly start decreasing hunger in our communities.
I think with all these audits too, it's going to help kind of give us an idea about where our weak points are. And hopefully, like, I'm not big on big bureaucracy in general.
Right.
So I think it's going to be really beneficial for us to be able to see, okay, well, because we are such a solutions oriented community. I don't think everyone is like that at all. I think it's just been a lot of fluff in a lot of other cities. But I think for cities like us, we can really benefit from that level of streamlined efforts.
And we can be better stewards
Hmm.
of to the people that we're charged to serve. I mean,
Exactly.
I say that again, like I feel like the staff and we are stewards of the board, but we are stewards of the community. And the once that we forget that, then we have expired like milk and it is time for us to move on.
That's a
But
great analogy
yeah,
because, like, it's food related.
it's food related, right? So I really do have hope that we will continue to figure out different ways and
Hmm.
solutions for hunger. And hunger has changed. The face of hunger is not always what you think it is. And over the last 3 or 4 years, it's definitely been challenging to navigate, through the storms. But, we keep figuring it out. Like I'm hopeful we're not going to have a federal shutdown because we
Hmm.
also lean in on those. We take care of, the prison in Big Spring. We have Panther Junction down in Big
I
Bend
didn't even
National
think
Park.
about I didn't even think about prisons.
TSA, we lean in during, one of her, like, we each have I call it a GER moment
Uh-huh.
at the food bank where, like, we have why we get up and
Yeah.
do what we do
I
every
wake
day.
up in spite every morning to,
And
like, I
ugh,
have to, like, fight it,
it's
do
like,
what I gotta do to make the world better. I
yeah,
get it.
yeah, it's like your GER factor. And each one of us has a moment or has a couple of moments through our history at the food bank. And like even Autumn's, one of her biggest GER moments was one of the federal shutdowns, what, 18? 19,
19.
and, she had to go down to Panther Junction with one of the mobile outreaches and get food down to those people,
It's a
and
long drive. Did
but
you have to drive? Okay, no, that was I was about to think in my head. I'm like, I'm picturing you in an 18-wheeler.
No, I didn't have to do that. My team rode in a truck,
yeah,
just in a
box
Big
truck.
box truck?
Yeah,
That's a long drive to drive a box truck.
but we do that.
week,
All week?
all week.
Mhm.
Yep.
That's
So we
fun.
did Big Spring, Alpine. Well, Big Spring, then went to Alpine, Terlingua, Big Bend.
I got married in Terlingua, so I know how
Oh
long
yeah.
Presidio.
We
Nobody realized how that drive to Presidio is scary.
It's
Yes.
brutal.
As a woman, like driving by yourself, I'm sure you weren't by yourself, but like I've had to do that before in like the oil field.
Yep.
It is it's like you're in Mars.
It's terrifying.
And then you sometimes have cell
And
service
sometimes,
and
and
sometimes you
we
don't.
do a distribution once a month in Presidio. We feed about 600 families. Like
Wow.
the staff, especially during the summer, has to get there. The outreach team must get there like at 4 o'clock in the morning because
Yeah,
of the
because it's
heat,
dangerous.
and it's heat, the heat. And so we sit up on the side of a dirt road with our 18 wheelers and some box trucks, and we make a drive through and we take care of those families. I mean, that's just an example of all the crazy things that we do. And so I'm I'm hopeful that more people will learn about what the food bank does and learn about how we can benefit everyone in our community,
Mhm.
not just those that are hungry, which I
Right.
think we do a pretty good job. But I'm hopeful that we will find solutions and continue to be innovative and creative and make a difference.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having
I'm
me.
excited. When we post this, we're going to put some information on how to like get into contact with you guys for donations and
Absolutely.
volunteering. So don't worry about
Volunteering.
that.
Yeah, like we have all the things, social media platforms. If you need TikTok, X, Facebook,
I know
Instagram,
y'all are like
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
Oh man, Autumn loves her some LinkedIn.
Me too. Me too.
We have Boomtown Showdown coming up. So if which is a,
That's
it's,
cool.
well,
Send me information on that and I'll show up and I'll do like a thing.
what's really
Be fun.
cool
That'd be
is
fun.
it's a energy competition. So
Cool.
we have right now we have 11 energy companies signed up. It's a $10,000 entry fee to purchase the food, and they have 2 hours to build as many boxes as they can in September during Hunger Action Month. And what's amazing is we build like 28,000 boxes in September. Last year, Katerra won. The year before that was Faskin. They get this like Stanley Cup sized trophy and bragging rights. Every engineer goes crazy
My brother-in-law works for Baskin, so I'm
Oh,
sure he like was so excited for that.
oh my god, yeah. So they like all the engineers watch all of like Autumn's social media posts, and they like design how they're gonna do their like it is.
Literally, it's like on the board.
That's
And
so
like they
funny.
have it all mapped out.
I'm the
It's
only one
so
that's not an engineer in my generation within my extended family, and so that is hilarious. That very much fits an engineer's brand.
Oh yes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so
They're
they
like,
have,
I must win the most efficient like
Yes.
square box ever, and I'm gonna make it Tetris so that the cans fit here and then the rice fits here,
Absolutely,
so that the
no.
bananas are protected.
One company had photos like underneath the blind. They had photos.
So that
showing
they
the
could
photos.
match it. That is
Yeah.
so funny.
but it is but we so
It's the most
hunger.
engineering thing I've ever heard in my
Oh,
life.
but it's amazing, and we have the best time doing it. Like us as a staff, like it's September is always brutal for us. It's Hunger Action Month, so
Mhm.
everything needs to be orange and everything needs to be about the food bank and awareness, right?
Mhm.
But we also do the road shows when we open all of our college
Mhm.
campuses. We travel, and then we also do the King of the Road, which is this competition with our oil companies. But it is so fun, but also to like so many people learn about what we do,
Yeah.
about our work, and so I love that. So
That is so
yes,
neat. I'll have to come out and do
we
it.
we invite you to come hang out.
Oh, so cool. I would love to do that. I want to like kind of give them beef. I'm already thinking about how I can like kind of troll the engineers because they lose it if it's not efficient.
Right.
They're like,
So many.
why is this not? We could fit 5 more things in here.
Absolutely. Yeah, you should totally come in and like
You're not folding the box right
yeah.
because it's not secure. Oh,
Right.
yeah, I'm married to one. I get it.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh. It's crazy. They're a different breed. No offense, engineers. Don't cancel me. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having us. We have been
Yeah.
we really have enjoyed
I'm gonna have
talking
to
about
do a
our work.
tour.
Yes, come to
I'll
both
come do one.
campuses.
That's
Yeah.
so cool. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. Be sure to check us out on Spotify. We have LinkedIn, just like the West Texas Food Bank. You can also watch this episode on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. Thank you guys so much, and be sure to support the West Texas Food Bank. Bye.